Hey everyone, this is George and I'm back with a new video. I got a chance to watch Netflix's Black Summer and here's my thoughts on it. And so before I go any further, I do want to mention there will be spoilers for the show, so if you haven't seen it, you might want to check out the show before coming back to this one. I will be vague as to characters. I won't mention like names or anything like that. So Netflix finally got in on the zombie craze. Sure, they've had a lot of great zombie fare, but this is a Netflix original. Black Summer is essentially what The Walking Dead should have been. It's a solid romp into familiar zombie territory, but where it really succeeds is in its execution and in the details. The story begins in the initial stages of a zombie outbreak, and we see one couple planning their escape in an attempt to rendezvous with a military evacuation. The family makes their way there along with groups of other survivors. When we get there though, we see just how bad things are, as there's only one small convoy and outfit of soldiers, and when it's discovered the father's infected, they actually bug out and they end up taking the daughter with them, but the parents are still there scrambling, to get safety. From there, everything kind of goes to hell, as the goal of the characters is somehow to find loved ones or safety, as things quickly spiral out of control, or the general zombie movie plot. Like most zombie fare, there's no real explanation for the zombies in this universe, but one of the characters does mention something that I thought was pretty interesting. He mentions that it's like a parasite looking for a host, and I thought that was really interesting because I had never thought of it that way. I don't think if that's particularly accurate, but at the same time it's an interesting way to look at it, and I'd never heard it before in any other zombie medium that I checked out. So the good about this series, well, the zombies are actually pretty terrifying. From the first episode, they really show you how incredibly dangerous these zombies are, as we see one take several rounds to the head and just keep coming until it finally goes down. I think I saw him empty like a whole clip into one of these zombies, and these are good headshots and the thing keeps coming. So that's not a fluke either though, and the series regularly shows you how incredibly durable these zombies are, and it gives the series the killer edge that can be missing from a lot of the usual zombie fare. Like maybe when you see something like a zombie go down after like a little jab to the head. No, that's not happening here. These things are hard to kill. And the actual transformation is really interesting, I thought. It seems like everyone is infected, and once you die, you immediately reanimate. And from there, it's the zombie hunting life and eating people, the same old song in Zombie Dance. What I also thought was really interesting about these zombies is how intelligent they are. And I wouldn't necessarily call it intelligence, but it's more like instinct. These zombies can somehow seem to home in on the target, and they're nearly impossible to escape from once they get you in their line of sight. I really like the characters. I thought they were mostly unique and interesting, and it's really easy to become invested in these characters and their particular stories. Characters can and do slip in and out. I mean, you'd expect this is a zombie apocalypse, but while there are core characters, honestly, no one really feels like they have any plot armor, and you genuinely feel dread for the characters with every zombie encounter, because it can be and usually is their very last moment. And I thought the show felt very real for the most part. People actually look dehydrated and famished. The clothing looks like it's consistently degrading from blood, sweat, and sun exposure with each passing day. I thought the situations the characters find themselves in felt mostly real. There's a scene in the earlier episodes where a guy sweet talks his way into a woman's car and then proceeds to threaten her with violence if she doesn't get out of her car. There's several moments of friendly fire, and the only thing the character can do is literally cry and then finish off the poor victim before he turns. People's bodies actually succumb to fatigue and illness. In one scene, two characters are literally dragging one of their friends because his body is in so much pain he can't run anymore, and the zombies are literally moments away from overwhelming them. It gets that visceral, and I think that's why the ensemble cast really shines and elevate what could have just been another zombie show to a really solid entry in the zombie mythos that I truly hope gets a sequel. I genuinely felt it was harrowing, and you definitely feel the weight of the constant near-death experiences of the survivors. Now for the bad. For me, the show nearly went off the rails in the episode titled Alone. In this episode, one of the characters, seemingly in my opinion the least interesting of the characters, kind of bumbles his way around evading a single zombie. I think this episode was meant to convey the ferocity of the zombies and their intensity and how they home in and lock on to targets, but you know, it really nearly devolves into a Zombieland like joke. And based on the season as a whole, I really don't think the creators were going for the Zombieland dark comedy at all. But that's what I got when I watched this episode. Something I thought really brought down the episode is the guys being chased by this zombie. Like I mentioned, they're not smart, but they do have this strange, really good hunting instinct. And the guy literally falls asleep on top of a bus with the zombie nearby, and it doesn't get to him. But moments later, when he wakes up and tries to, I guess, trick the zombie runs around and climbs up the bus. And so that and some of the other kind of moments in this episode really kind of took me out of the show. And then a little later in the same episode, there's literally a scene where the zombie crashes through a fence, and it's kind of like Wile E. Coyote. He's looking around, and the instinct, like I mentioned, he turns around and he sees the character, and like Roadrunner, he just runs off in another direction trying to evade this zombie. It's unfortunately comical, and I thought it really hurt the series as a whole, but I'd love to know what you guys think. I mean, you might have saw it another way, but that's how I saw this episode. Like, I really thought this single episode really hurt the series as a whole. The fact that they chose to focus on this character, this was actually really disappointing to me that they chose to focus the next episode on this character, because in the previous episode, they actually killed off what I thought was one of the most interesting characters, one of the characters I was most invested in. And you could also, if you think of it more positively, you could consider that a very gutsy move, which you could say also, but for me it was disappointing. It made the loss of this great character so much worse by the fact that they focused on the character who I thought was the least interesting on the next episode, and who I thought genuinely hurt the series with that one episode. And I would say he's the weakest link, and he nearly derailed the show for me. But to be fair, I will say this character does become slightly more interesting. The show also teases a zombie horde so vast that you only see huge amounts of like writhing bodies and massive dirt clouds from where they're trampling. But they never show this, and numerous characters discuss this, but I don't ever recall seeing the horde. In the season finale, there's a large group of zombies, but it's honestly the amount of zombies you would have expected to see ever since the beginning of the show, and nowhere near what I'd expect when I think of a horde of zombies, especially the way they were described by the characters. So no horde, it's teased but never seen. Maybe they're saving it for a second season. This also kind of tells me that this was a lower budget production, that they saved everything for the season finale. And you can kind of tell this by the fact that there's never more than 2 or 3 undead at a given time for the majority of the episodes. And these zombies in this universe are attracted by noise. They have no aversions to sunlight, so they will attack in broad daylight, and they'll continue to hunt until they get their prey. And there's plenty of people dying and reanimating. There's car crashes, people running, screaming out in the open, gunshots. So I honestly thought there should have been many more undead people than just 2 or 3 per episode, at least in the earlier episodes. The other thing that I would consider as really bad was that they used a very strong shaky cam at certain points in the show, and it can literally be an eyesore. I felt my eyes like just kind of hurting while I was watching this, and this is coming from somebody who has watched a ton of found footage films, and I generally like them. I like Cloverfield a lot and such, but this to me was almost overdoing it. And I do get the effect that you're getting, because it does feel like you're literally bouncing up and down, but at the same time it was too much, I thought. But thankfully the visual effect at this intensity is used sparingly. Another thing that I wouldn't necessarily say is bad, but something I don't quite understand, is why Netflix or the show creators never went full on rated R or unrated. I mean, there's never that full-on violence or gore that you'd really expect from a series like this. Things are shot in a way that's alluded to but never really shown. For instance, there is a couple having sex, but there's no nudity. The other thing is you never see anyone ripped to pieces, even though it's meant to convey that this is happening. It's strange because they don't shy away from violence in this show, but they never actually go as far as I thought they probably could with this series. The reason I think this might have happened is because the creators of the show maybe wanted to shop the series around to networks that may have strict rules about violence and nudity, and wanted to make it easier to edit out the more explicit scenes. The last thing that I thought was kind of bad, but not really, was how the series ended. It was very ambiguous, and it was actually kind of creepy. They do reach to safety, and they do find the woman's daughter, but it's definitely kind of creepy and ominous because you see her running towards the camera, and for some reason she's getting faster and her expression seems to kind of twist. Now, I don't know if this is supposed to imply or maybe hint at that she's been turned, because in the series the mother does kind of have hallucinations about her daughter. So maybe the daughter has turned and she's running at them, but the mother can only see the image of her daughter as her daughter. I don't think that happened, but how ominous it ends, the way they shot it, it feels like that could be what they're trying to hint at. I honestly don't know. They leave it very open-ended, but it would be interesting to think if it was this very thing that they were hinting at, the hallucinations being so that at the very end it pays off where the mother is seeing the daughter, but instead the daughter's infected and she's coming to kill them. That would be really interesting and pretty dark. But honestly, it's just too ambiguous of an ending to determine either way. More than likely, the daughter's safe and she's just running to her mother. But it would be interesting if what I mentioned also could have happened. That would definitely be something for a question for the creators if anyone had a chance to ask. So overall, this was an exceptional first season. I'm definitely invested in what comes next. I would love to pick up these same characters, but honestly, I think the show creators may just pick up with new characters, but later in the timeline. Although at one point it does seem like one of the characters escapes and they don't follow up on that character. And I watched this episode 3 times to kind of see, did they show what happens to this character? But no, I don't believe so. It may have been that it was supposed to be implied that this character was hunted down and killed, but at the same time, it is very open-ended as to the fate of this character. So I definitely feel there's a ton of potential and definitely a lot of mystery surrounding the show and these particular zombies. And it's unknown if they'll decompose or if they will be this dangerous until they're put down. There's just a lot of unanswered questions, but it really makes you want to come back and makes you want to see more. And I'm hoping that there's already plans for a second season, but I guess we'll see how it does on Netflix. Hopefully it does really well. So I really enjoyed Black Summer and I honestly can't recommend it enough. So if you enjoyed this video and you want more content, I tend to do a lot of comic book related content, but I like a lot of different stuff, so I may be doing more of this type of stuff too. Definitely consider subscribing to my channel. If you like the video, leave a like, share it if you have somebody who might want to know more about this series. And as always, thank you so much for watching.